Hey y'all, Q here, checking in for another tarot deck review. So if you're new to this series, I'm doing a series, however long, of tarot deck reviews of decks that I've collected over the last few years. I've been reading tarot since 2018 and have bought a lot of decks in the time that I've been reading. And I notice that as I get further and further along in my practice, I get more and more intentional about the decks that I'm buying, just based on my own discernment and different things that I'm looking for in a tarot deck. And because I love talking about tarot, I wanted to do this series talking about some of my favorite decks for my collection. So if you want to just get right into the review for this deck, you can go ahead and skip ahead to the timestamp that I have in the description down below. If you're new and want to hear more about my process and my list of criteria for how I go about and move through the reviews, stick around for this little clip from the first one I did. Editing cue here. So it turns out I can't figure out how to download that section from the last video. The way that I saved it was wonky, so I'm not able to find it and break it down and clip it apart or whatever simply enough. So I'm just gonna re-record this. So I made these two little slides. We're looking at one of them right now. I'm just gonna quickly run through if you wanna hear what my basic criteria are when I'm reviewing a tarot deck. So first things first, representation. I want to look at who is in the deck, why are they in the deck? If there's no people at all, what that choice reflects. Basically just wanting to get a sense of if you're a person who wants to use this deck, I want to give you a sense of whether or not you'll be able to see yourself in it, or if you'll be okay with not being able to see yourself at all, maybe in some instances. Next is Esoteric Alignment. So with that one, I'm looking at how well the deck conveys the traditional meanings of the cards based on Rider-Waite-Smith and Thoth decks. That's it. And there's no with all of these rankings, it's not even rankings, right? I'm not doing it on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 stars. That's too simple to me, much too simplistic. I think that there are some decks, right, that are basically Rider-Waite-Smith and Thoth copies, and there are other decks that are creative with those, and there are other decks who are based on all other systems or are meshing multiple systems, and I love all of those kinds of decks. So this is just kind of with Esoteric Alignment getting a sense of has this person done their research? If they're making creative choices with the meanings and with the way that they're depicting them, is it founded in something, or are they kind of just making stuff up, right? For symbolism, does the deck offer enough visual information for the reader to engage with? And this one has a little caveat, sometimes there are pip style decks, and pip style decks don't have a lot of visual information going on the minor arcana. They just have if it's the 5 of swords, there's going to be 5 swords on that card, and that is it. So with decks like that, you lean on more numerology and more your experience with the card, kind of separate from the imagery. So obviously I'm not gonna be upset about that because those decks are useful in certain contexts, but for decks that do have more symbolism, I want to see how well is their symbolism conveying the meanings that they have in their own guidebooks if they've written one. How in alignment are they with traditional meanings? How does it all match up? How does it all line up? And I think I talked about this a little bit with the symbolism, but the guidebook, is it a useful guidebook? Is it basically just the little white book that comes with every Rider-Waite-Smith that has really, really, really basic keywords and doesn't give much? We're digging into that. I'm receiving a phone call. I'm just gonna... Okay, and then next slide, packaging. I'm looking at the packaging. What kind of box is it coming in? If you watch the first video, you know that I really don't like tuck boxes. It's a personal preference. If you don't mind them, that's great, but I will talk about it if it comes in a tuck box. So we're looking at that, and just the quality of the card stock and the quality of the deck book itself, because we want our decks to last. So I go into that to think about durability of the deck. Availability, I'll let you know if it's still available for purchase, and I'll always link whatever deck I'm talking about in the description. And if it's not available for purchase, sorry about it, I'll let you know. Usually I don't have, so we have a favorite and least favorite card here. I usually don't have a least favorite card. Most of the time I like them all. So you're hardly ever gonna see a least favorite card. What you will more than likely see is me showing you 20 of my favorites in rapid succession, and that's what we're working with. And then last but not least, I'll just go over like, you know, some decks that I've backed on Kickstarter, so they might come with different accessories, or the person might offer different accessories related to the deck for purchase on their website. So I'll just talk about those. I'll show you them if I have them. If I can't find them and I have them, I won't show you, which you'll see in this video. But all right, that is enough of my talking head. Thank you so much for listening to that. Now on with the review. All right, so if you're here, you're watching this, you've seen the title, you know that this is going to be a review of the Akamara tarot deck. I have had this deck for, it's been almost 2 years, potentially longer. I backed the deck, I think on Kickstarter maybe. I can't remember how she funded the first deck, but this was the first deck that this creator made. I think their name is like Lolu. I can't remember the last name, but they make a lot of really amazing tarot and oracle, like African diasporic inspired decks. I also kind of matched my outfit to the deck, so I'm very much giving you this like brown and like bronze, and not brown, like black and gold moment. And this is like an amazing black and gold deck. So I'm just gonna start with the first criteria that I look at, which is realistic representation. Who is represented in this deck? Black people. What I want to note about this deck is that it's more of a pip style deck. So there's less people per se in the deck, and the people that are represented are usually like kind of abstract. So like we have a hand here in this deck, or in this card pointing towards, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of swords. We have a Baba Cutlass, which would be like the King of Swords, and then that's how that person is represented. So you can see like throughout this deck, we've got Iya Kauri. So the idea with the deck is that it is African diasporic, and so like for me, when I'm using this deck, I'm not using it thinking there's white people in the deck. Like, of course, it's only black people. And so as far as realistic representation goes, I appreciate this deck because it is a deck with like that specific purpose of not trying to represent everybody in the world, but also not representing the world as if there are only white people, or even as if there are only black people, but is representing like a very specific set of cultural traditions created by like Afro, Indigenous, and black people. So that takes me into the symbolism for this deck. I sometimes have a hard time with decks that reimagine the four suits, so like the cups, the swords, the pentacles, cups, swords, pentacles, and what's the other one? Wands. Ooh, I forgot. Okay. It's all right. And so the next thing I would move into then is esoteric alignment, which is how in alignment, you know, the representation of the cards and the meanings in this deck are with the Rider-Waite-Smith and maybe even like a Thoth-based deck. And I would say like this one is very much in alignment. I'm gonna pull up the guidebook really quickly. Because in the guidebook, I would say the keywords are really similar to what you would see for any Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And I think what's different and what sets this deck apart and makes it very special, especially for me as a black person, is that, especially for the major arcana, you get some history on different like gods, especially like gods in like West African or like even Haitian spiritual traditions. And then also even in the minor arcana, you get some of that as well. I think that, so Lolu includes different like astrological associations for each of the cards in this book, and they're not in alignment with the Golden Dawn associations, which at first I was like, I wonder like why, I wonder like where that's coming from, because I had only known about the Golden Dawn astrological associations for each of the cards, and so to see different ones, I was like really curious and unsure also at the same time about what was in here. And I think that was just like some like decolonizing work that I had to do within my own mind around like what is the most true and what is like right or not right. And I'm sitting here like using divinatory tools, thinking about the way that there is no one right way to associate one thing with another. There is no like most right way of reading tarot, of reading any kind of cards, of using any kind of divinatory practice. And different traditions have like different input and different meanings that they assign to things. And so what I love the most about this deck, the Akamara Tarot, and also the other decks that Lulu has created, is that it takes us away from this like European centered lens that we often tend to look at tarot like at and through, and we get to see it through, again, this African diasporic lens. And so it lends a kind of nuance to the meanings of the cards. And I also find it just like, it's easier to read with. All of the like decks that I have that are created by Black people and have that kind of background of like, you know, I have like the Hoodoo Tarot, and I have like this one, I have like Asotele, I have Tongues of the Mother, I have all of these decks, and I find that the readings are more straightforward because I find that socially, like Black people are much more straightforward in the way that we communicate, in the way that we speak to one another, in the way that we convey how we feel, in the way that we offer like wisdom. It's much more straightforward, whereas if I'm working with a Rider-Waite-Smith, it is much more likely that my reading is going to be a little bit more like roundabout, and it might be gentler in that way too, and is almost kind of love and light way, in the way that like descendants of colonizers, descendants of European people, have a very different relationship to like the way that they communicate. And so the way it comes across is just like much more circuitous. This kind of feels like a tangent, but I think it's just related to the way that, you know, the meanings that show up in this book and the nuance offered there, and also the willingness to like go to what is difficult, is, I think, really important. And also coming at it from the perspective of like histories and lineages of Black people. And so I'm kind of already talking about it, but the guidebook, I really love the guidebook for this deck. I think if you're a beginner, this deck would work really well for you, because this guidebook is like, it's basically a book. I mean, look at it, look at the size of it. It's a really great reference book that you can use alongside any deck that you would like. And I think, you know, it's easy enough to translate, you know, the cutlass to swords. Sometimes I run into a little difficulty with the court cards, remembering which is which, but I find that like the longer that I work with the deck, the more consistently I work with it, the easier that becomes over time. So that's just like a little learning curve that you can very easily like move through. Another thing that I really love about this guidebook is, you know, we have like our upright and reversed card meanings, and in here, upright is aware and reversed is still. And I really love that, because it kind of speaks to, you know, sometimes people will read like a reverse card as like the opposite of its upright meaning, but it's not exactly the opposite. It's just like another expression of the same energy that might be like an expression of that energy that is very like blocked off, or more free, or more internalized, less externalized, or like more like inner subconscious. And so I love this dichotomy that she's proposing with like aware and still, because it again allows us to like dig into that nuance between upright and reverse cards. I'm jumping around out of order, but I think that's completely fine, because I can do whatever I want. So the symbolism in the deck, I think it does a good job. I think for me, it's important that I already had like a foundation with more imagery focused depictions of each of the cards, especially thinking about the Rider-Waite-Smith system. The minor arcana do adhere to the Rider-Waite-Smith system, but it was important that I had that foundation, because this is a pip style deck. So like, if I have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have the 9 of swords here, and it's just a picture, and it's 9 swords. Some of the minor arcana will have kind of like nods at the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. Some of them won't have that at all. So like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I'm looking for one that like has the nods. I think the ones that are 1, 2, 3. So you can see like the 8 of wands is often just an image with like the 8 wands like moving across the sky, and so this is kind of a nod, like the placement is a nod at that. You know, in the 9 of swords here, it's kind of a nod at in the way that like usually there's like a person on a bed and there's the swords behind them and the person has their head in their hands, and this is kind of like set up in the same way that the swords are, just minus that image. So I do think that it is important if you're a person who like needs a lot of imagery, to kind of have a foundation with tarot first before using this deck, or recognize that like when you're using this deck, you're gonna want to use a little bit more numerology, especially if you're reading for other people. And also what I found for me personally is like, this is not necessarily a deck that I tend to use for clients or for other people. I'm using this deck when I'm doing a reading for myself and I need to get in touch with like ancestors or intuition in a way that like maybe the imagery might be distracting me from like getting in touch with that internal wisdom. So I find that like pip style decks in general, especially like black decks though, I find allow that kind of almost like mirror like soul subconscious space to get opened up and for me to be able to like see into what a card may be trying to convey in a moment, that I might not be able to if I'm using a more imagery specific deck. So I really do appreciate that about this deck, that it offers up that space. Okay, so let's talk about packaging. I'm thinking about maybe next time, and tell me if you're feeling it or not. I might put the packaging at the beginning because I feel like it makes more sense, but I'm just throwing it out there. So packaging. So this deck came in this big old box. It also came with, I'm just gonna go grab it.
One eternity later.
Okay, just kidding, I cannot find it. So the deck also came with like a black and gold, like velvety deck bag that you can store the deck in as well. And because this is a deck that I backed on Kickstarter, I believe it came with like a card of authenticity with like what number deck it was. There's a truck backing up outside and it's hella loud and it stopped. Great. So I finished recording this entire video and then I got up to stop the recording and my phone was dead. So I got cut off partway through. So I might repeat myself a little bit, but I think we'll be okay. And that might be why you might be noticing like a slight shift in the framing of the video, as well as a shift in lighting, because it's just like a little bit later because I had to charge my phone for a bit to get restarted. So I think all that I had left to talk about was my favorite cards in the deck. I am realizing now that I don't have least favorite cards in like any tarot deck that I own. I usually like all of them. I probably wouldn't do a review if I didn't really like the deck. So there's that. So I'm just gonna show you some like top ones. So we have Muertos, also known as Death. We have the Ten of Cups here, Ten of Calabash. I'm gonna show you the Lovers again. Marasa, we have Akamara, also known as the World. We have the Four of Pentacles, Four of Cowrie. What else? I'll show you a couple more. We've got the Fool, which I love in this one, Origin. I absolutely fucking adore the Eight of Swords here. I really love the Three of Swords as well. And I wanted to show you the Knight of Cups from this deck, just to like keep in very cute tradition of like always showing off that card. I don't actually feel like looking for it though, but I will show you the Ten of Swords. That's a really good one, as well as Conjure, also known as the Magician. All right, those are some of my favorite cards, but like honestly, I could just keep, this could be a walkthrough. This could be a flip through of the entire deck, because there's not really a card here that I'm not like super loving. All right, so that's the review. I will be sure to leave links down below for where you can purchase this deck at, as well as see other things that Lola has created. I had somebody ask me to do a video of like maybe just a quick walkthrough of all of the decks that I do have, so that, you know, if folks are asking for reviews of other decks, they know what I have and don't have. And I love the idea. And what I will say is like, I can already foresee myself trying to do a quick walkthrough of my entire collection and it becoming like this 3-hour long thing that is just like a review of every single deck but smushed together. So I figure what I want to do instead is I have already picked out the decks that I want to do for this round of reviews, because I have a lot of decks. I have like maybe close to like 20. But I'm not going to do a video for every single one of them just yet, because there are some decks in my collection that are newer that I haven't worked with as much, that I need more time with before I can really formulate like a well-rounded opinion. And so I have just like a portion of the decks that I already own that I want to do reviews of for this round of reviews. So I'm going to show you what those are. We have already covered today the Akamara Tarot. I have done a review of the Next World Tarot. I'll put a little link in the cards above for you to see. I will be doing a review of the Crystal Unicorn Tarot. This is like a third-party version of the deck, but I do have the original as well. I will be doing a review of the This Might Hurt Tarot deck. I will be doing a review of the Astro Soul Oracle deck. I will be doing a review of the Crow Tarot. Love this one. I will be doing a review of the Rumi's Gift Oracle deck. Absolutely adore this Oracle deck. It's arguably my most used one. And I will be doing a review of the Spacious Tarot. And those are the decks that I have slated for this series. Also because, like, if I try to squeeze more than that into this string of videos, I'm going to not want to do it anymore because I need variety. So after this project, I have other things up my sleeve, but those are the decks that I want to get through in this round. So if you're looking forward to hearing me talk about any of those, let me know in the comments down below. Find me on my website and subscribe to my newsletter if you'd like. I do plan on doing written versions of my reviews as well. A little later down the line, I wanted to just start with like talking through my thoughts and feelings before I write something more cohesive for my website. So that's forthcoming. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in for round 2 of my tarot deck review series and oracle deck review series, as you will see. Until next time, take care.